Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Use the chat and let us know where you're tuning in from. Oakland. Hello, Ella. Glad you're here. And once we have a few more people logged in, we will get started. San Francisco. Hello, BB. All right. Finney Ridge. Hi, Heather. Seattle representing. Thank you for being here. All right. Ballard. Hello, Lucy. More Seattle. All right. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Lara Hamilton. I have a cookbook shop here in Seattle, Washington that's called Book Larder. And we are just starting to do a few in-person author talks starting in March and April. But for now, we are continuing to do author talks on Zoom. The great thing about that is that we can do an author talk like the one tonight, where we have author and interviewer in completely different parts of the world, and you can join us from all over the country. So thank you so much for being here. We are recording the talk tonight, so if you need to pop off early or you want to watch it again later, it will be on the Book Larder YouTube channel, where you can find all of the Zoom author talks that we've done over the past almost 2 years now. We are so excited to welcome Faith Kramer tonight and her wonderful new book, 52 Shabbats. She is going to be in conversation with Leah Koenig, who is also a cookbook author and writer. They are going to talk about the book. Leah has stayed up with us. She's actually in London now. So they're going to talk about the book. And of course, they will leave time for questions as well. If you could please just use that little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions, that'll make it easy for Leah to keep track of those. And you can use the chat function to sort of talk to each other if you would like. You can support the talk, of course, by choosing to purchase the book from Book Larder. Thank you so much, everyone that's done that so far. Faith has sent us book plates, and so you will get a signed copy when you purchase it from us, and I will drop a link to that in the chat as the talk gets going. All right, so I'm going to turn things over to Faith Kramer and Leah Koenig.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Faith.
Hi, it's so good to see you.
You too. And it's also really nice to be back virtually at Book Larder. When my little book of Jewish sweets came out, I did an in-person event there. It was 2019, but it feels like 700 years ago since the pandemic has happened in between. So it's nice to be back and to be celebrating your book tonight.
Thank you.
So I am really excited. As Lara mentioned, I am in London right now. It is 1 a.m. So if I look a little tired, I'm actually in my cozy pajamas, because I was like, this is going to be Shabbat's all about rest and all about being comfortable. So I figured I could get away with that. But Shabbat is actually one of my favorite things about being Jewish, and Shabbat dinner is one of my favorite things about Shabbat. So it's really exciting to get to kind of delve into the topic with you, Faith, and to explore your book.
Thank you.
I would love to begin just by hearing a little bit about your own Shabbat dinner evolution. On the off chance that there's somebody, or maybe not off chance, if there's somebody in the audience who doesn't know what Shabbat is, can you give us just a like 30-second 101 what Shabbat is and how Shabbat dinner plays into that? And for everyone who already knows, bear with us for 30 seconds.
Okay. Shabbat marks the end of the Jewish calendar week, which is cleverly named like day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, But Shabbat marks the end of the week and the beginning of a kind of a holy day of rest. And it starts 18 minutes before sunset and ends the next day when the first 3 stars appear. And during this time, we're supposed to have 3 really festive meals. And the first one is the Friday night dinner, and probably the one that's most widely observed is the Friday night dinner. And there's a lot of different, depending on your level of Jewish practice, there's a lot of different things you might do during this dinner. You might go to synagogue first. You might light candles. You might say certain prayers over the bread and the wine, over your children. My family's favorite prayer is probably the Shekliano, which is one that we just kind of acknowledges our place in this moment in time and how much we are glad to be together. And that is one of our Shabbat traditions. Some families sing songs, some families have political discussions. I don't necessarily advise that, but okay. And having a celebratory meal is part of this. However, Shabbat happens whether we do something or not. So to me, it's the intention of doing something for Shabbat that actually makes Shabbat dinner. And sometimes it's just, looking at your partner and saying, Shabbat Shalom or Good Shabbos to each other. One is Hebrew, the other is Yiddish. When I've been alone and I just light the candles and maybe buy myself some flowers, and it just makes it such a special occasion. So there's this feeling of a special occasion for me. There's a feeling of a connecting tradition that goes down the millennia. And there's a feeling of taking care of myself and taking care of other people. And those kind of all roll together in Shabbat for me. And that's why I came up with this idea for this cookbook maybe 10, 12 years ago. I even bought a domain and I never did anything until I met my publisher, and she really encouraged me to go for it. And I did.
I'm glad she did. You want to just hold up the book again really quick so people can see it?
Okay, let's see.
Such a beautiful, inviting cover.
Right. And we
So-
just won a design award, by the way, from the Pub West. We won a silver in cookbook design for the book. So a shout out to Bibi, who I believe is online here, who is the food stylist, and Clara Rice, the photographer, and Andrea Kelly, the designer.
Amazing. Congratulations. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your own Shabbat dinner evolution. I'm wondering, was it something that your family did when you were growing up? And if yes, what did it look like? And if no, how did it sort of become central to your life?
It was something that my grandparents did. My grandmother was kind of cultural. You know how we have cultural Jews that are really kind of secular? My grandma was a cultural Jew that was kind of observant because of where she was in her time and place. And so in fact, my earliest memory of Shabbat is her covering her eyes and bringing the flame from the candles, which is part of the candle lighting prayer, to her eyes, the light to her eyes. That's my earliest Shabbat memory. So the strong memories I have of Shabbat dinner were taking place at her house. And we lived about an hour away. And I wouldn't say we were there every Shabbat, but we were there for a lot of Shabbats and holidays.
And what was around her table? What do you remember besides the candles, food-wise?
Oh, well, she had this break. I hadn't thought about this in years. She had this break. She lived in a Brooklyn apartment. And and she had beige carpets that are originally beige that I don't think had been shampooed in maybe 20 years. So you knew not to go barefoot. And she had this break front, and she had plastic covers on all her upholstery too. She had this break front that the table came out of. It was one of these ones that kind of folded in pieces and went back into the cabinet. And I really remember that. And I also remember she was a horrible cook. I love her dearly. She gave me a love of Shabbat and Judaism and Jewish holidays, but we used to joke her brisket only had flavor when she burnt the onions. So my mother really didn't do much with it, maybe because her mother was always in the background. But when I was an adult, I had lots of different exposures in different ways to Shabbat dinners, from the very traditional to the very untraditional. And it was something I gradually incorporated into my children's lives. And now I see, at least when we're together, I see it in my grandchild's life. And it makes me very happy to be one in a line of continuing this.
Yeah. And just to keep it on the personal side for a second, when your kids were little, what kind of things did you make? Did you have like a regular Shabbat dinner repertoire that you turn to? And if so, how has it kind of evolved or changed over time?
I would say whatever I was making for dinner was Shabbat. I was not one of these people that makes a mini Thanksgiving meal like every Friday night. I mean, there's that joke, I'm sure you know the joke that, why do people complain about having to make a Thanksgiving meal? We do it every Friday night, with 2 kinds of meat and this and that and everything. So it was, whatever I was making anyway. And we would, and again, it comes down to intention. The kids had a Hebrew school teacher that said, you could get you can order a pizza and it's still Shabbat. And especially when they were younger, I just kept it like that. I would say my Shabbat meal practice changed when I began writing for the J, which is the Jewish News of Northern California, the local newspaper, also available online. And I started writing for them almost 13 years ago. So we're coming up to my bat mitzvah there. And every 2 weeks I had to produce copy, ready or not. And I was already had a real interest in international food. That's mostly what I wrote about. And so when I started writing the column, I started applying that lens to Jewish food. And I think that's when my meals started to morph into more specifically Jewish dishes than I had been making before, but also not necessarily Jewish dishes from my own tradition.
I see. So did you grow up Ashkenazi, I'm assuming? Eastern
Yes, I'm Ashkenazi New York Jew.
Okay. So then you started to incorporate dishes from other parts of the Jewish kind of global cuisine, which is very apparent in the book that that you do that. Before we get to that a little bit, though, you write about how on Shabbat it's so important to kind of welcome others to your table, and how it's kind of a special it adds a special layer of relevance to the celebration of Shabbat. And I guess I'm wondering, how would you sort of describe in your estimation or in your words, the role that Shabbat dinner plays in Jewish community ritual and life?
I've just started thinking about all the ways that all the places I've gone to to Shabbat dinners. I've gone to Moishi houses, which are collectives of young people that live together. I've gone to SHABBATS, which are, around the world, like Phnom Penh and Vietnam and in Japan and elsewhere. I've gone in Australia, I've visited temples and synagogues, and people have invited us over. So all around the world, I've celebrated these Shabbat dinners with other people in other ways. And to me, it's kind of it doesn't matter what they serve. It doesn't matter how the prayers might vary, but it's this ultimate connection for me. And I think that Judaism is a very home-based religion, and it's just a basic building block of that. And I think if you have that intention and you do something with it, you have the beginnings of a Jewish practice. And it might be all the Jewish practice someone wants. They might not want more than that. Or it could be a real entry point for you to learning more and understanding more, not just religious practices, but about the different Jewish communities, about the different Jewish histories that we have and share.
I want to hear about that Shabbat dinner in Japan. What was that?
Well, it was in Kobe. So we took the train. Were we in Tokyo then? Did we take the train from Tokyo, or were we? I forget what town we were in, but we had to take the train to Kobe. And then we had to walk for a mile to find this place. Thank goodness, for a Japanese SIM card and Google, right? And we get there, and the rabbi and the Rebbetzin, the co-director of the Chabad Center, were extremely welcoming. And there were all these, it was filled with people from Israel and America who had settled and made their lives in Japan and were raising their children Jewish. And some of the young people had been to Israel. I mean, it just kind of, if you have a stereotype in your idea of what it means to be Jew, going to these foreign places and sitting down and having a Shabbat with people really are going to blow apart those stereotypes. Because I'm having dinner with this woman who is a young woman who's just back from a year in Israel, and she is half Japanese, and she is 100% Jewish. And it's hard to, it's easy to let go of your preconceived notions when you meet people like this. I don't remember a lot about the menu. I just remember they served really gorgeous fruits are a big thing in Japan. And, we saw melons selling for like $50 there just because they were perfectly round and ripe and things.
Yeah.
And there's this huge platter of really wonderful fruit for dessert. And I remember that. I remember in Phnom Penh, we met an Israeli expat who was trying to raise peppercorns in the north, which is not traditionally where they're raised. And he had come in to have Shabbat at the Chabad Center, and he had brought a whole bunch of these fresh green peppercorns, and the rabbi's wife had made them part of the dinner, had made a beef stir fry with these green peppercorns. And I had never had anything like it. And that's Jewish food to me. I mean, Jewish, it respected all the dietary laws. It came from a Jewish source. And yes, it was perhaps more Cambodian than it was, shtetl food, but it still was Jewish food. And I think I tried to put that attitude into the book.
Yeah, you definitely did. Another thing that I love about the book is how you sort of universalize the experience of Shabbat dinner. I always say that, all cultures and religions have something to share with the larger world. And I think the idea of Shabbat, like that pause, the idea of stopping for the week, of having dinner, of, singing and talking with your family and friends around the table. I think that's kind of like one of the Jewish tradition's gifts to the rest of the world. And I guess I'm wondering if you can tell me or sort of expand on why you decided to take something as particular as a Jewish ritual dinner, a Friday night dinner, and broaden it out to the larger world. Because you really do invite people of all backgrounds to kind of celebrate Shabbat dinner in the book.
There was a time in my life where I tried to keep being Jewish secret, that I thought that being Jewish would harm me in a way, professionally or with other people or whatever. And I realized I am Jewish down to my fingertips. I just burst with Judaism. And rather than hide it, I should share it and have people understand it like I do. And we often have non-Jews at our Shabbat table, and, we try to teach them as they come along. But even if they're not that interested in learning, they enjoy the experience. I also like to feed people. The recipes in the book are what I feed my friends and family. And yes, there's classic recipes that my readers have asked for over the years, like chicken soup and matzo balls, which, by the way, I tell you how to make as both floaters, which are light ones, and dense ones known as sinkers, because I'm not getting in the middle of any family arguments there. But I also tell you how to make a Mexican-inspired matzo ball and pozole soup. My falafel is not made into balls and fried, although I would have put that in if my editor had allowed me. There was just no room. It's made into a pizza crust that's topped with fresh herbs and feta cheese, and then drizzled with sauces like tahini sauce and pomegranate molasses. So, to me, all these foods relate back to being Jewish food, and the connection between them is what I feed my family and friends.
Yeah. And it really, it is appetizing regardless of what your background is.
Yes, I really, before the presentation started, Leah was telling us about some of the kind of Middle Eastern and Israeli restaurants that are opening up in London right now. And I really think that 10 years ago, people wouldn't have known what pomegranate molasses is, or would be able to find it. So I've really benefited from this explosion in interest in Middle Eastern and Near Eastern food, and that the ingredients are more readily available. I try to give a lot of uses, so when you buy a bottle of something like that, you have ways to use it up. But there's a lot of other recipes and recipe writers and food writers out there also working with these ingredients now. That wasn't true 10 years ago.
Yeah, it really has exploded. On that topic, tradition is so paramount with any religion or any culture's food. And, when we go to our family's tables for a holiday or for Shabbat, sometimes we kind of expect to have the dishes we grew up with, whether it's matzo balls or, Moroccan crème, like, spicy fish. And so, there's a lot, if you're looking at like this global, if you're looking at Jewish cuisine as a global cuisine, which it is, there's a lot to choose from. And I guess I'm wondering, like, what was your process when you were putting the book together? You already mentioned having to cut falafel, the regular falafel, because there wasn't room for it. So how did you sort of conceive of which recipes made sense in the book?
Well, I started with a list of more than 600 recipes I've
Oh
created.
my.
So,
Wow.
so I knew I wanted to do it. I knew I wanted ones that had a strong connection, either through symbolism or tradition or technique, or through some story I was telling about them, to Judaism. I knew I wanted to organize the book. I've always, in my mind, this was always 52 Shabbats, and each of the main recipes has a little sub menu, and then there's another 40 plus recipes in the back of the book for what I call fundamentals, like your chicken soup and your how to make tahini sauce, things like that, challah. And then there's another 10 or 12 recipes for side dishes, and another 10 or 12 recipes for desserts. So it all kind of works together. But some of the things, and I knew it, and the main 52 are seasonal. So I kind of also had a feel from the response I got from my readers at the J, what people are kind of interested in, at least the ones that take the time to write me, and which is a tiny fraction of how it goes. So I kind of work with those, and then I got a list together, and I worked with my editor and publisher, and we kind of refined the list down further till we got to the 52 main ones, and and everybody has their favorite. My publisher at Collective Book Studio, she's a big fan of the mushroom cheese strudel, and I like to give it a shout out every time because I know it's her favorite.
Yeah.
My son's favorite is the pomegranate molasses brisket. My husband's favorite is the Ethiopian spice pot roast. So everyone's got their favorites, and I tried to include the ones I could, and make it kind of a whole book with a whole gestalt. And I didn't want to overload it. I didn't want too many Ashkenazi recipes, so there was no room for anything else. I didn't want too many travel story recipes, so there wasn't room for other things. So I tried to balance it out.
Yeah.
And the spinach dill phyllo pie just got a shout out on chat. I noticed out of the corner of my eye.
Yeah. So did the spicy beef simmus, which sounds delicious.
And I actually use that as a filling for tamales, which I make with either chicken schmaltz or vegetable shortening or a coconut oil to replace the lard.
That sounds delicious. And I love that there's that they're kind of grouped by season, because if you're doing a 52 Shabbats, one of the things that sort of drives me crazy about some traditional, at least Ashkenazi tables for Shabbat, Eastern European tables, is that like the classics have been so canonized that it'll be the middle of summer and you're at a Shabbat table and you see like hot matzo ball soup and hot brisket, and you're like, I want gazpacho, and I want like a salad with like goat cheese on it. I don't want this heavy food. So I love that you gave it that seasonal quality. And
I think that part of it is I live in California, and we have this wonderful produce, and it's very season. You have an appreciation of the seasons here in terms of food, not necessarily in terms of snow and leaves changing. I don't get that.
yeah.
But I think another reason is that I didn't grow up with every Friday night having the same kind of canonized menu.
Yeah.
I visited that menu. It wasn't and I think that there's a lot of tradition around Jewish food. And one of my aims with the book was, I like to say that, Shabbat's the holiday that happens every week. And a lot of Jewish food is only kind of brought out for holiday tables, be it Passover or Rosh Hashanah or Hanukkah or whatever. And I think that it's too good. The food's just too good. The ingredients are too interesting. The stories behind them are too fascinating just to only bring them out at holidays. And when they only come out at holidays, we have this whole huge history of adapting local cuisines to our needs and sharing what we're producing with the local people as we move around the world and in our trading circles, our diaspora, our immigration, what have you. But suddenly you go to the mid 20th century and everything gets like put in cement. And I think I first heard the story from Joan Nathan about this one woman who was being taught how to make brisket. Brisket is a braised meat dish. It's a kind of a pot roast with using the chest muscle of a cow. And it's a big piece of meat. And the woman is told to cut the ends off before she puts it in the pot. And she says to mother, why do we do that? I don't know, says the mother. Goes to the grandmother, goes to the great-grandmother in the nursing home, and the great-grandmother says, because my pot was too small. And I think a lot of our Jewish food expectations are based on how our mothers or grandmothers or mother-in-laws made it and served it. And that kind of got fossilized. It ceased to adapt. Or if it adapted in ways that our foremothers and forefathers might not have. Coca-Cola brisket, which is a take on Coca-Cola ham. Lipton soup mix brisket, and they all have a place in people's taste memories, and they taste great, but they've become the standards. Mm-hmm. And I like my pomegranate molasses brisket, which uses a Middle and Near Eastern product to cut the richness of beef in an Ashkenazi dish. And I don't like to necessarily call it fusion, but I feel like I'm mixing and matching the best all these food traditions have to offer to create flavorful modern food with big taste. And some recipes like the citrus honey salmon are really very easy, and some are more complicated, but I try to walk you through them. I tell you how to pick a brisket, what to use instead of brisket if you can't find brisket, how to prep your brisket for cooking, how to cook your brisket. Big tip, cook to tenderness, not time. How to slice your brisket against the grain, always against the grain. That is probably my true religion. And so I hold your hand through this. My challah recipe is based on the ones that the 3-year-olds in my Temple's preschool make. Oh. I don't think you could get any easier than that. No, I've adapted it, but
That's
still.
So sweet.
If a 3-year-old can make challah, you can make my challah. And in fact, my daughter-in-law made her first challah from the recipe from the book. And gosh darn, it looked better than any I've ever made. So I must have done a good job writing up the recipe.
You did your job right. You did your job right. I have a few more questions for you, but I just want to give everyone who's listening the reminder, if you have a question in about 5 or 10 minutes, I'm going to open it up. So if you look down in the bar in the bottom, you can see there's a little Q&A section. So you should, whatever questions you have, whether it's, or if you want to just share like a memory that, that this conversation is bringing up to you for like a Shabbat dinner or a special dinner you've had, we can have a discussion as well. So just a little halfway reminder to do that. I know we already talked about the falafel pizza. I feel like that's that's the hit single from the book. Although according to Bibi, it's also the salmon, which sounds delicious. I haven't tried that one yet. When you're in your kitchen, I sort of imagine you going to like the Berkeley Bowl and walking down the aisles or wherever you go.
Well, you have the advantage that my secret superpower is shopping the Berkeley Bowl, which is amazing. But every community has even if it's just a strong section with good produce and with and now with things being available online, you can get things like amba, which is an Iraqi Israeli fermented mango sauce, online if you don't have a place that you can get it near you.
Or and Trader Joe's now you can get it. Mm-hmm. You can get it. I'm sorry. Trader Joe's. You can find it at Trader Joe's.
Not by me anymore. They stopped carrying it, but for a while you could. But you can still get zouk, and there's all these great things. I like to make, one of the simpler ones is I take grilled corn, and I love Mexican street corn, and I've had corn all over the world. But my favorite is the Mexican street corn. And I take it and I make it Middle Eastern by drizzling it with tahini sauce and pomegranate molasses and maybe some zhug and all this other stuff. And it just makes that dish Jewish to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you elaborate a little more, like how, when you're in your kitchen, how do you come up with new ideas? As a fellow recipe developer, it's hard sometimes.
I would say that the biggest component is that I have a deadline every 2 weeks with the J, and everything I develop doesn't make it into the J. I tend to, how that goes. So that forces me to look around in my environment. Well, you could always fall back on it Shabbat, but I can give you some examples from books, from recipes that are not in this book, but we're in the month of Adar. The book also goes through the Jewish calendar because it's hard to understand Jewish food, Jewish holidays, the food, the symbolism of the food without understanding the Jewish calendar. And that was very important to me. And one of the reasons I wanted to do a seasonal chapters so I could introduce each season and talk about what was happening in that month. So Adar is the last month of the Jewish year. We have 4 New Years in Judaism, so a lot of party hats. And it's the last month of the Jewish New Year. And it's the most joyous month and the month with the most good luck. And so everything with good fortune is considered symbolic, and fish is supposed to be the symbol of it. So I made these golden fish soups. One is a turmeric and curry soup with noodles, because noodles in the Chinese tradition are the long life and a New Year thing, and fish in it. And I made a golden beet soup. So again, it's golden, it's yellow. Gold is symbolic of good fortune, and fish, which is thought to be, and the fish patties in the soup are actually cut up gefilte fish patties. Wow. And the borscht is flavored with hawaj, which is a Yemeni spice. So I've got a Eastern European borscht, I've got the Yemeni spice in it, I've got the American style, I've got the jelly broth from the gefilte fish in the broth, and I've got the fish patties. And that those both came for me is that I want to do something with fish and soup and golden. And I can't tell you, exactly how it broke down, but I do look at cookbooks, including Leah's, it's not really showing up here, the Jewish cookbook. I do go to research, food history and Jewish food history. I do read, sometimes I read interpretations of what the Torah portion is for the week to try to figure out if there's some food connection to it. And I pull all those things, and then I just start thinking about it. And sometimes it might be a spice. I want to do something with the hawaj spice, which is like a Yemeni version of curry powder. Or I want to do something with the Ethiopian spice, berber. What can I do with that? And how have I had that? How would I like to have it? What qualities does it have? And it has the qualities that make it a really good rub for pot roast or brisket. And that's how that dish started. And then sometimes I just wander the aisles today was my local supermarket, but often it's at a specialty supermarket or the kosher market or the Asian market or the Italian deli or wherever I am, just wander looking for ideas. And I have, I keep notes in my phone, and I just write down my ideas so I don't forget them.
That's great. Yeah. And really nothing sparks creativity like a deadline. I have found that. That's also. What is something that surprised you while you were researching or writing this book?
Surprised me. I was surprised how little is actually written about the Shabbat traditions of the different Jewish communities. I tried to include what little I did find, and I did talk a lot about what the different communities were like as much as I could. But I really thought that I would be able to find all this reference work accessible, where they would say, well, the Jews in Greece, well, they have the tradition of lighting wicks and oil, one for 7 days. And, that's one I did find. But I thought there'd be something like that. The Jews in Holland do this, the Jews in England do this, and there really isn't a document like that. So that was really surprising to me. And I hope whatever little I was able to dig out, that will help add to the level of knowledge about Shabbat around the world.
That's interesting.
The other thing I think I learned is that the interconnection between the Jewish community and the local communities, and how and the give and take and the adaptations of the food back and forth and the caring of foods. So you have a community in India, in Kochi, which used to be known as Cochin, where depending on who you believe, there's been a Jewish community there for a millennial, give or take, and that they were spice traders that settled in that area. And then later on, after the Spanish Inquisition, you had the Sephardic Jews come and some settle in that area also. And that played with like the local food traditions back and forth. And so I found that fascinating and a little unexpected. And it suited me quite well, because my whole thing is that I think that we're looking at a lot of adaptation back and forth, and it supports what I do with Jewish food.
Yeah. And did you end up including a recipe from that community?
I have a recipe from South India, from Kerala, which is the name of the state, and it's my take on like a fish patty, fish cake with coconut and green chilies, and then I make a kind of chutney over it.
Yum.
But that's, and I've actually been fortunate enough to meet some people that were once in that community and have written some cookbooks and stuff. So I've actually been playing with more of that food. So I'm hoping that I'll have an opportunity to create more recipes in there, or even just try more recipes from that region. There are 5 or 6 different distinct Jewish communities in India, and they all have different food ways. So there's a lot to learn there.
Yeah, I know we're talking about your book, but there's also a book that came out this season called B'nai Appetit, which is
by Esther Cohen. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It's less of a cookbook and more of like a historical book about all the different regions of India. So,
well, I actually have the book. I've had it for a while. I just haven't had time to play with it yet. So
yeah.
And my and I also should give a shout out to Claudia Roden, whose book of Jewish food really enlightened to me, when it first came out, about the, I knew there were Jews here, there, and everywhere, but like many Ashkenazi Jews, I really didn't understand what the difference was between Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews. So Jews from the Iberian Peninsula and Jews that are from the Middle and Near East. And, it helped me sort out more about the differences that bind us, so that was very helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to ask you, did you write any of this book during the pandemic, or was it all written before?
A lot of the recipes were developed before, but the book was written entirely during the pandemic. Okay. My husband likes to joke that I couldn't have written it if it weren't for the pandemic, because I'd be traveling too much. And I never had the heart to tell him that I was going to stay home and write the book and let him travel by himself. But I retested dishes and I developed some of the final recipes, but most of the writing was done during the pandemic. And it was a very interesting photo shoot during the pandemic. We were taking people's temperatures. Everybody had to have masks on. We had prep areas that were far away from each other. And then the COVID affected the publication date, because it the book sat in a ship off the coast of Long Beach for close to a month, and then so it pushed back our publication date.
So frustrating. But when you were developing the recipes, did you have any epic Shabbat dinners during that time as part of the testing process?
Oh, we have a lot of Shabbat dinners. I wouldn't say like every Friday night, but we have a lot. And I remember one, and I think I made the shashuka there, and just people were sitting around the table. This is pre-COVID. Once there was COVID hit, we weren't doing that. And people were sitting around the table, and yes, they're enjoying the food, but they're enjoying each other, So, I mean, part of the recipe for a good Shabbat is to create an environment where people can connect and share and appreciate the moment. Like, we start the meal with the sheklianu, and we want the whole meal to be a celebration of the moment and of the intention.
Yeah, I love that. I guess the last thing that I want to ask you, and then I'll throw it open. I see there's a few thoughts and questions in the chat. Is what's one or two things that you kind of hope people take away as they read and cook through your book?
Well, I guess the big one is that they understand that, even if they're not Jewish, that they understand what Shabbat is, and that they feel comfortable around it and celebrating it, and that they understand that Jewish food and Jewish community is not a monolith, and that there's all these different moving parts in it. And I think that I tried to show in the book respect for all these different communities, and I'd like people to take away from it. And I hear from people that already have a Shabbat practice are most excited about the recipes. People who don't have a Shabbat practice are really excited about the essays and the stories in the book. And then there's this one woman who told me that she converted about 20 years ago, and her mother really wanted to be a good Jewish mother to her, but didn't know how to do that, at least not with food. And they bought the book, and they sat down and they read it together, and they read all the stories. And that the mother felt like she finally understood what was going on in her Jewish daughter's life, and that she could be, in terms of Judaism, and that she could participate in it with the recipes. And I don't know, that was like getting number one on the New York Times for me, hearing that story.
Oh.
And then people send me their pictures of how they make their food, and and how much they enjoyed it, and how much their family liked it. And I know I have a few people on who have made the recipes. I don't know if Jessica's still there, but who are starting to cook their way through it. I don't know, they might not get through the 52 Shabbats in a year, but they're looking through the menus for inspiration. And when I hear those stories, it makes me feel good, because again, this is the food I feed my friends and family. And it varies from, pretty simple dishes to things that are more elaborate, but hopefully I give you enough hand-holding that you'll be able to do it. So the response to the recipes has been phenomenal.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for putting it together and writing it so we can all learn from it. I want to turn, I'm seeing a few questions in the chat. I hear that the Q&A is maybe not working for everybody. So if, we're a small enough group that if you want to put stuff in the chat, I'll be able to see it. So if it's not working for you, that's fine. I am seeing a question about halva. Where did it go? I think the question, I forgot, I'm not seeing it, but it was, do you have a favorite recipe for halva? And is there one in the book?
There is not a recipe for halva in the book. I find it temperamental at best, and I haven't found a way that is uniquely mine to make it work for everybody. But I do have a recipe for a sweet tahini sauce. And I don't know what you'd want to make with halva that you can't do with tahini sauce or sweet tahini sauce, but the sweet tahini sauce is a dipping sauce for challah fritters, which are, you pretty much think of them as little French toast rounds with banana or jam in them. And then there's a dipping sauce. You can heat up some chocolate sauce, or you can make the sweet tahini sauce. And the sweet tahini sauce is great on ice cream and other desserts as well.
What's in it?
But I don't have a halava recipe. I'm still working on that one. I have been working on both a halava recipe and a Turkish, the Turkish lokum. What's the other word for the lokum, Leah? Do you remember?
The Turkish delight, you mean?
Yeah, the delight. I've been working on getting that to gel properly, set properly. I've been working on those recipes on and off for, I don't know, 14, 15 years, and I still don't have one that's ready for prime time.
What is in your sweet tahini sauce?
Well, I leave out the garlic. It's in my regular, and it basically it's got agave in it, and it just behaves differently because of the sweetener. You could use honey if you prefer, but I gave agave, and that way it could be vegan if you want.
Yeah. Katie asked, I picked up your book at an independent bookshop in St. Petersburg, Florida. Yay, independent bookshops. But yes. I haven't cooked from it yet. Which recipe would you want to see me start with?
Ooh, that's a trick question, because it really depends on what where you are on the, how confident you are, if you're a beef eater, whatever. I tend to recommend a more traditional menu of the pomegranate molasses brisket and the tahini mashed potatoes and the charred greens to start. You could, and if you're looking at desserts, I guess my favorite dessert would have to be the mini mango cardamom cheesecakes.
Yum. Jessica said that she and her kids are committed to cooking all the recipes over Shabbat for over many years. And the challenge is we love each recipe so much that we end up making them many times, which is the best compliment you can get as a recipe writer.
And a good portion of, thank you, Jessica. And Jessica often shares her photos, so I get to see, and she does such a great job with them. The book has a large number of vegetarian recipes in it. The first recipes in each chapter are vegetarian, and I also give some suggestions on how you could make a non-vegetarian dish vegetarian. So I really, one thing I like to do is I like to mix things up. I don't like to always be eating meat or chicken or fish. I like to have a large number of vegetarian entrees in my repertoire.
Yeah, that's great. If my kids weren't so picky, I would also do that.
Well, I had one kid that was very picky, and he poisoned the other one's mind. Oh. I don't think I sauced pasta for 18 years, but now that they're adults, they eat everything. So
that's good to know. I keep my fingers crossed. I was a buttered noodle kid, and now I'm a professional food writer, so there's hope. I guess if there aren't any other questions, Katie says, I'm almost done cooking my way through Jessica Fechter's book, Stir, which I highly recommend. This book is the perfect next step in my Jewish cooking journey. I love that. I guess if there are any more questions, feel free to add them into the chat or the Q&A, but I would love to end by asking you, if somebody has never hosted a Shabbat dinner before, or if somebody has hosted Shabbat dinners but kind of wants to get out of a rut, or just find a new pizzazz. Sorry, it's almost 2 a.m. here, so I'm getting a little tired.
You're doing great. You never know if you didn't say anything.
If I'm starting to slur a little, that's why. If someone's trying to break out of a rut or start a new Shabbat practice, Shabbat dinner practice, what would you recommend? Not necessarily.
Well, if you're new to Shabbat dinner, I would say read the How to Shabbat section, and then decide, because I give some basics there, the choreography, and then decide what you want to do and what you want to maybe research more online with some of the resources I give at the end of the book. And then I would pick a menu that maybe has one or two dishes that are, a little bit special for the Shabbat bride, maybe, but not everything. Don't outsourcing or take out things. I mean, make make it easy on yourself so you can enjoy Shabbat, that you don't feel like you're chained to the kitchen or there's a bomb that's going to go off when it's time to light the candles if you're not done. So, substitute, don't, maybe if you're looking at, maybe buy purchased hummus for a starter instead of making it yourself. Put your emphasis on the main dish. I find desserts are really easy to outsource. Salads are a really easy thing to ask people to bring. So just make it easy on yourself. And remember, it's your Shabbat dinner, so it's what's special to you. Now, if you're looking to shake things up, I would say go outside your comfort zone. If you're usually cooking Ashkenazi food, look for a recipe that's got a different flavor profile. I really, my favorite recipe right now, and I know I shouldn't have favorites for all my children, but my favorite recipe right now, and it changes, so if you ask me next month, who knows what it will be, is the layered chicken and vegetable plav. It's a kind of a pilaf. It's from the Central Asian tradition, and it's made in one big pot with a layer of vegetables, a layer of chicken, another layer of vegetables, and then you top it with this golden saffron rice, and it all cooks together. And when it's done, you plop it out like that. I guess I should call it the chicken plop, but it's chicken plop. and it's got a lot of dill in it, and it's just beautiful and aromatic. And I like to drizzle, well, it's more than drizzle. I like to really pour pomegranate molasses on top, because that sweet tart fruit taste kind of cuts right through all that. And and it's something most people have had chicken and rice dishes, but I can guarantee you they've never had anything quite like that. If you don't like dill, you can use cilantro. And then I said this someplace, and they said they didn't like cilantro either. I said, well, you can use parsley then.
Yeah, there's always going to be a cilantro hater in every group.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, I'm sorry, Larry.
That's all right. Go for it.
I'll just close out by saying this was a delight, and it's always a pleasure to get to talk to another person who loves Jewish food and is doing such great work to bring it to more people. So thank you so much for everything you do and for writing this beautiful book. And yeah, thanks for inviting me to be a part of the conversation.
Thank you so very much. And also for clocking in from so far away. Really appreciate it.
Oh, yes, especially. Yeah. Thank you so much, Leah, for leading such a great discussion. Faith, congratulations on your wonderful new book.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in this evening. You will be able to find the talk on our YouTube channel within probably the next 24 to 48 hours, and we'll put it on our social media as well. I hope that everyone is staying safe and healthy, and I hope everybody cooks Shabbat on Friday.
Yeah, it's tomorrow. Shabbat.
I do like to say hashtag not just for Shabbat.
Not exactly. I was going to say these are menus that are great any day of the week.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Lara, and thank you, Leah. And go Booklarder.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Be well, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.